Today we're joined by Jacqui Leggetter, and I'm going to ask her to introduce herself formally in a moment and just explain a little bit about what she does. But she is head of data platforms and operations at DWP Digital, an amazing organisation. Those of you who don't know, the size of their data is incredible. The last time I checked, Jacqui, it was 250 terabytes, and I think that was in 2022. It's probably grown even more by then because it's growing at a rate of 10% each year. So Jacqui's got a huge job. What we're going to spend the time talking about today is how becoming a data-driven organization has helped DWP to transform the way that they make decisions, transform the way that they work from an efficiency perspective. It's going to, Jacqui might explain how it affects policy implementation and the service delivery. But before we start, I'm Nicky. I work for SAS. I've been with SAS for 10 years, and I run our public sector health and life sciences business unit across Northern Europe. But I get the easy job today because all I'm doing is asking questions. The difficult job is going to be done by Jacqui. So Jacqui, can you start just by explaining to everybody a bit about your day-to-day, what you do for DWP Digital?
Sure. Hi everyone, it's good to meet you all through sets of headphones. So I'm Jacqui Leggetter and I'm one of the Deputy Directors in DWP Digital Group. As Nicky says, I own the DWP data platforms, and the 250 terabyte quote is just one of our data warehouses. We have absolutely millions of terabytes of data, like most large-scale government organisations. So my job in our data and analytics team as a senior leader is to help take our data strategy and take our mission to become more data-driven and make better use of data, not only to help drive efficiencies in our operating model, but also to deliver joined up and more purposeful, more engaging services for our citizens. Typical of what most of fintech and banking, etc., try to do, breaking down data silos, building interoperable data. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But really getting value from our data, and that can be value to the citizen or value to us as an organisation. We also, over the summer, some of you may have noticed, we had a general election that resulted in new government.
Didn't notice.
And of course, with new governments comes new policies, new ways of thinking, and the analytical and insight information that we utilise, and again we can talk a little bit about that later, but using all of the data that we hold helps us to help ministers and help policymakers decide what levers to pull, where we want to add benefit, where we can afford to add new elements of policy and what impact that may have on citizens as well. So hugely impactful across the organisation. The final area that we support through those data platforms is our operational insight. So we have an army of people who are looking at analytics that tell them where is all the work, how long is it taking on average to process claims, how long is it taking in Glasgow compared to Birmingham, what is the difference in processes. So really looking under the hood of that operational delivery as well, and making sure that we've got the right amount of people in the right places to support the backlogs of work. So my role is making sure all the data is ready and available and interoperable to support all of that.
I mean, it's amazing that you've come to join us today, Jacqui. Thank you, with such a huge amount of remit under your expertise. So we're going to start just digging in a little bit about the kind of data-driven approach that you have taken at DWP. And I want to dig into how you are planning to integrate the transactional data with the analytical data to support some of those outcomes that you just talked about.
Sure. So again, like a lot of organisations, we have our operational systems that support day-to-day processing, lots of really rich, real-time data held in those systems. And then we have our analytical systems where we feed from the operational systems. In all of our legacy platforms, because they are two separate systems, they often get out of sync. Often the analytical platform is a few days lagging behind. And also in terms of being responsive to providing new requirements, particularly around performance insight or customer insight, it's really challenging to get the operational teams to prioritize, maybe provide new data sources, etc., to support what they see as the analytical arm of the organization. So part of our data strategy and becoming more data-driven is bringing the analytical and insight arm of the organization closer to service operations and to the operational systems. So in terms of being able to align both sets of data and being able to implement what the traditional hub and spoke model, where more of the data insight and analytical processes will sit with our business aligned digital teams. So if, for example, someone in pensions operations wants a new piece of insight to understand what's the average length of a process within pensions, instead of coming to an analytical team to work out the answer, we can help them by embedding data resource into the pensions digital team, so they become more self-sufficient. We're removing the funnels for work, and it becomes the then prioritizing their own work instead of a separate arm asking them to prioritize. So it's really important for us in terms of making sure that we embed data resource in every team, and that we upskill the business aligned teams that's used to dealing with operational data, that they start to see and understand the wider context of the organization around performance insight, customer insight, and of course use of AI and large language models as well.
I mean, that's a big task, Jacqui, and most of the customers that we speak to, if we ask them what their biggest barrier is to making use of their data, it is the skills within their workforce. So I wonder if we can just spend a minute talking about that and how you are preparing the teams and upskilling the teams to kind of take on, if you like, that data custodianship and ownership. How does that?
Yeah.
How are you doing that?
Yeah.
Because it's a big job.
Yeah, it is. And I guess the first thing is, you're right, the upskilling. But there's something before the upskilling that's cultural. We've spent the last 10, 15 years being told, lock up your data, nobody's allowed to see it. And all of a sudden, there's evangelists like me coming along going, no, don't lock up your data. We want to drive value from the data. We want to be able to use the data safely, securely, governed, and in the right way, of course. But we're asking people to shift their mindset on how we get better value from data instead of siloing it and keeping it in a silo. So in terms of starting that culture shift is really by upskilling. We've ran anything from implementing data custodian and data stewardship roles throughout the organization. So even if you are in an operational data system, if you're responsible in owning an operational system, you are a data custodian. So doing formal training for all data custodians and giving them a certificate that says you are now a trained data custodian or a data steward. And then running brown bag sessions, lunch and learn sessions. We were quite fortunate that in the civil service last year, you may have saw on LinkedIn, we promoted One Big Thing. And one big thing for the civil service was a whole set of learning and coaching activity around data and the importance of data. So we signed people up to bite-sized, half-hour bite-sized modules, all the way through to full training courses. We've also set up a really robust data practice, and we have a senior leader running the data practice. And running the practice model means that not only within data and analytics, but anybody who is working with data is encouraged to align to the data practice. So even if your core job is aligned to the delivery manager or to software engineering, you can align to the delivery practice as a secondary profession, and you get offered loads of lean-in sessions, teaching sessions, and you get offered access to a lot of data experts if you want to come and have a conversation around how to do stuff, and particularly when we're building new systems, when we're transforming some of our operational landscape, we're thinking about the data and analytics requirement right up front as we're designing the new services, rather than the traditional approach of trying to retrofit analytics on the top of something that you've already built. We're also running strong apprenticeship programs through data apprenticeships, bringing in data engineers, data scientists. We've just launched a data scientist apprenticeship, and we're doing those at all levels. So we're doing entry-level apprenticeships, plus degree-level apprenticeships, plus master's apprenticeships, so we can bring people in at all level. And within the hub and spoke model, we're embedding data experts within every digital team, so that we can start to think about how we embed the strategic data architecture, reference data into every system that we build going forward.
Thank you. I mean, basically, you're all in.
We are all in. We are, as a department,
we are
all
in.
There doesn't sound like there's
any stone left unturned, and I guess that's the message, that it has to be an all-in approach. I want to go back and talk a little bit about legacy systems, because, I mean, DWP are holding data from before anyone in this room was born. You know, I mean, I doubt there won't be. There won't be anyone in this room that is older than some of the data that you have. So can you explain to us, because it's a typical problem, not probably quite as big as the one that you have at DWP, but what are the kind of strategies and capabilities that you're implementing to help modernize some of that legacy infrastructure and data?
Sure, yeah. So you're right, we've got a number of legacy warehouses all on different technology stacks, sitting in different hosting solutions, each carrying their own degree of technical debt and challenges. And what we've been doing is reviewing how we build a data warehouse infrastructure that supports distributed data, interoperable data, where we can offer warehousing, mini warehouses that are connected through a single pane of glass in terms of managing the governance, data access controls, etc. But we need to be able to spin up some of these. So we've been doing some activity around, first is looking at the quality of the data that's held in those legacy warehouses and understanding that quality and thinking about how can we tidy up the quality, so we know, for example, in our operational world, historically, before mobiles were a big thing, we had fields in our operational system for postcodes, and our users typed in mobile phone numbers in the postcode field, That's all fed into the analytics system now. So there is something about, and this is where we can cleverly use AI, and we've been doing a bit of testing with some AI technologies that will help us to identify where our data quality issues are and where we're able to tidy them up. So using AI to read semi-structured and unstructured data to help us then get it into a better structure. We also think about largely some of the personal data that we hold. We don't need to hold it for 50 years. We want to hold the corporate memory of that data. So we want to know how many people in Gloucester claim state pension between particular dates, but we don't need to know that it was Joe Bloggs of 15 High Street. So there's something about how we create that live data into clean data rooms, into non-PI data that makes it much more usable and much easier to govern, but it's representative of the live data that we hold in the live services or in the PI services. And if we can start to separate some of that out and create, largely aligned. Some of you might recognise the terminology of the medallion architecture, but starting to layer out some of that kind of core bronze level data, but we're looking at enriching some of that, making sure that as we build new systems, we can create the data lineage between the data in the new systems and the data in the legacy systems to make sure that we're not losing the corporate memory of those citizens. And then, as I say, lifting that up a level and making the data really available and really usable, because for the most part, analysts, insight analysts, etc., aren't looking at individual data. They're looking at tens of millions of rows of data, and they're looking at numerical aspects derived from that data. So being able to provide that in a clean data room space will really help them on board to just more free use of the data, because it's representative, alive, but not PI data. So we're looking at all of that. Our first step has been to take our legacy warehouse and remediate. The legacy warehouse hadn't been upgraded probably in best part of 10 years. Had lots of infrastructure technical debt, software technical debt, network technical debt. So we spent probably about 3 years really upgrading, updating that. And we've now got it on up-to-date software, up-to-date hardware, up-to-date network. We've done a little bit of tidying up the data as we've put it in there, but it is now although it's in our on-premise environment, it's in a good state for us now to look at migrating it to cloud. And I think that's really important. Sometimes you have to take the step back to take the step forward.
Yep.
And looking at your foundational data platforms, what kind of state are they in? Are they in a state? Because just lifting, if you put, I'm not going to quote the sign outside, but look for it. If you put rubbish in, you get rubbish out, yeah? So there's something about sort out what you get in, sort out what's held in those core data stores. Sorting out your new stuff is pretty straightforward, but sorting out those foundational platforms, which are your corporate memory, is hugely impactful. And certainly for us, we're now at a point where we're now looking at our next step, and we're looking at some of our other smaller warehouses. I think the warehouse that we've just remediated was over 250 terabytes of data migrated cleanly from an old warehouse into a new warehouse technology stack, new hardware, new software, new networks, brand new design, and went without a glitch. Zero issue, and it's been in that new environment for about 6 weeks now, so we're all breathing a big sigh of relief. It's hard, it's really hard, but I think getting those foundations right are key to us taking the next step into transforming them.
But now it's done, you know, kind of here comes the gravy. So, so what do you envisage the kind of new use cases for AI and machine learning now that you have this rich, shiny, new environment to work with?
Yeah, so I think in terms of some of the use cases for us in DWP, we certainly want to, like most people, the legacy warehouses are one great big warehouse, and we want to break that down so it's more usable and less of the big honeypot of data. So there's something for us using the AI, as I say, to really understand and help us tidy up the quality of some of that data. But in terms of some of our use cases, there's certainly for us in DWP, in leaning into some of our AI right now, there's a lot of things that we do with, we've almost got a world of old AI and new AI, haven't we? We talk about Gen AI being new, there was this big explosion, but actually, if anybody's data scientists in this room, you'll know that we've been working with AI for a number of decades. Yeah, a long time.
But don't tell the CEOs
no,
that.
Don't tell, because it's new and shiny.
They don't know we've been doing it since the 70s.
For sure. But some of the things that we're doing, for example, in benefiting citizens, we receive in DWP 22,000 pieces of written correspondence a day into the department. It's huge to manually sort all of that out. So we've been scanning it for a long time, and most of that unstructured, unsolicited post comes into just a big bucket of non-classified mail. But sometimes when people write to us, they're writing us in desperate circumstances. And if we miss that, that can be harmful to a citizen if you don't pick it up quickly. So we've been using AI now. We introduced AI a couple of months back to actually read through the unstructured text of that white mail to help us classify it and to be able to pick out if someone is saying words that we would believe would make them feel vulnerable. So training the AI and the natural language processing around how people would write and being able to tell the difference between I had surgery and I nearly died, or I read the headlines in the Daily Mail and I nearly died. So being able to tell the difference by reading the context, no offence to the Daily Mail, by the way, but just
oh, please give offence to the Daily Mail.
Understanding the difference around the context. So in doing that, we're now able to identify where a customer is vulnerable, and we're able to take them out of the queue, and someone will contact that customer, normally same day, and be able to identify and offer what additional support they might need. So in terms of that customer segmentation, and where we're using AI for the benefit of the customer, certainly in DWP, we look at the AI as an assistant. It's not as a job replacement, and that hugely assists our staff, because picking up with people who are maybe in hardship or really desperate situation, if they've had to wait 3 days for a phone call, that is not a good position for our agents to be in either. So being able to pluck that out and offer support right at the point we've received that piece of correspondence. Those are the use cases that we can start to investigate. And we've implemented that. We're also looking at how we can create data virtualization, how we can join up citizen journeys, and that's where we use the SAS product and leaning into SAS via in terms of curating data sets. So we've got data sets across different platforms that are sat in silos, and we're now able to, for example, on policy questions, if we're asked a question on how many people who come off a health benefit end up on a working age universal credit benefit, we can join up the data from both services, and we're able to provide those numbers, and we're producing national statistics so that, as a public organisation, we're accountable to the taxpayer and to ministers, and being able to produce improved national statistics, improved data that actually shows, all of the working age. You see regularly how many people are in work in the UK, how many are not, how many are inactive. All of that comes through combining data sets and using those data sets in a more meaningful and purposeful way. And that, of course, feeds into policy decisions. When we first came out of COVID, some of that information told us that our young people were most at risk, our 18 to 24-year-old age group were most at risk of being unemployed. And that's where our youth employment scheme came in, and apprenticeship schemes were really ramped up, because those young people were almost going to miss an opportunity to get a start in the workplace. And it was the figures derived from the data out of those systems that were telling us the demographics of the unemployed. There's also been, I think last year we started a scheme on the age 55 and over, because again, the data told us, right, we've not solved the 18 to 24 numbers, but it's much improved, and we now are seeing the demographics of age 55 unemployed increasing. So the over 55 additional help scheme was introduced. So it just helps us pull the right levers, and being able to use the data across those that have been siloed, getting that cross-cutting view really leans in and helps us make powerful policies that ultimately helps the citizen.
Yep, no, that's absolutely perfect. And staying kind of with that, if you like, we hear a lot of people talking about data sharing and collaboration across government and how so much more could be done. But I think DWP is an exemplar, really, for one who collaborates with other departments, who data shares with other departments. Can you talk a little bit about that and how that helps citizens too.
Yeah, sure. I mean, certainly in DWP, we are at the forefront of sharing data. We're always, sat around the table with other government departments, and we've had some great projects that we've delivered that have been really impactful on citizens and other government departments. So again, bringing back the use of data into our operational world and helping our operational world not just think about, I'm here to administer a benefit, but think about they're here to service a citizen, they're here to support a citizen, and that citizen's needs may be wider than just DWP. So we've implemented a whole API infrastructure, and our go-to is API first for data. So we recently implemented things like offering real-time benefit checks for things like free prescriptions, for Healthy Start payments, where households with children under the age of 4 can get additional support from DHSC. We do it for the Warmer Homes scheme, so the utility companies, if you're on a certain income threshold, the utility companies offer Warmer Homes discounts, broadband discounts. So we've really started to open up our data in a safe and secure way that's working not only across government but with private sector partners, utility companies, to really help support additional support that's available to citizens. And particularly in cross-government, where we want to get to, of course, is joining up services cross-government. So we're sharing information with every government department, I think, and certainly recently we've just provided a whole new data feed into the Office of National Statistics, which will improve some of the ONS statistics that come out in terms of DWP data as well. So I think it's really important that we can operate, and that comes back to us getting the data that's interoperable, being able to separate the data insights from the PI data, and being able to share the data insights without sharing the PI data. So keeping that PI data locked away, secure, used for the purpose that it's needed for, but where we're doing statistics, insight, information, all of that sort of stuff using the non-PI data. And I think that's where we're on that journey now.
Mm-hmm. Perfect. Thank you, Jacqui. I hope you all agree that that's been really insightful. I think we're lucky to have Jacqui here with us today. But just finally, Jacqui, if there's kind of one action that people could take next week, this week, what would you advise people to do first?
I think my piece of advice would be, if you are looking at your data transformation and how to get better use of data, start with your legacy platforms and start to think about what those data foundations are and what you want them to be. Have a really clear data architecture, data reference model, metadata model, and if you look at your legacy platforms in the context of those strategic reference architectures, that will get you your foundations right. To run any AI in a sustainable way, to run any large language model in a sustainable way, you need that data, that core data, that source data to be discoverable. You need it to be available, and you need it to be interoperable. Those are the 3 things, so that's where I would start.
Perfect. We asked for 1 and we got 3 things, so that's really good. Thank you so much, Jacqui. Thank you all for your attention.
Thank you.